for me. As you know, industry was booming during the Gilded Age, especially after the creation of the Transcontinental Railroad. The Transcontinental Railway companies couldn't get raw materials from far and wide, they could ship their products to nearly anyone in the U.S. As steel and oil became a more prominent industry, first billion-dollar companies were born. Into the world, my guest tonight will talk about all that later. But first, nation. People in the South were working for half the wage for a similar job as people in the North. And people were complaining that they weren't being paid enough for the labor they were providing. And the American dream was at risk. Folks, as factories began to rise, so did the need for unskilled workers, like women, children, and mostly immigrant workers. But that's how free market works, so, that's okay. Plus, who doesn't appreciate some cheap labor? Is there a representative from Nike here? Anyone? Okay, moving on. Finally, women were good for something other than making sandwiches. They were getting into the factories. Women had to help support their families economically. Therefore, they worked long shifts in cotton mills for significantly less than their male counterparts would. That's no longer the case anymore. Hashtag, thanks, Obama. Nation. Union groups were popping up faster than Mexicans in California. Labor unions like the National Color Labor Union and the National Labor Union were just accepting everyone. Who does that? The American Federation of Labor was only accepting white, higher classmen like me. And then there were the Knights of the Round Labor.
Do you believe in God?
Yes.
Do you gain your bread by the sweat of your brow?
Yes.
Are you willing to take a solemn promise binding you to secrecy?
Yes.
They had great frat bosses. As I said before, unions were popping up faster than Miley Cyrus twerking videos. And that brings us to today's word. The new workers' unions, as long as the Industrial Revolution took off, were fighting for the poor workers' rights who were losing their power. But aren't most of these workers immigrants? This is America, home of hypocrites and the greedy, and land of the, stolen. Anyways, as it turns out, some of the people do care about these workers. Groups such as Knights of Labor, AFL, and they tried to protect these poor souls. They fought for better hours, conditions, and wages. But I don't understand. Their life is great. Get up at the crack of dawn, rush to work for 10 hours, and $1 an hour. Almost no breaks. Horrible sanitation. Losing ligaments. Sometimes, when you look in the corner, you can witness the beautiful sight of a woman giving birth. I don't know about you. That's just great. Let's compare my day. Wake up at a decent time, then I'm forced to be educated for 6 hours, so I can have a promising future. Then I go home, where I have parents who support me. Those workers clearly have it better. However, the labor unions, the Knights of Labor, and the FL, what about half the battles and strikes that they took on? And in baseball, for all of you non-Americans out there watching, that's Americans' pastime, along with overpriced crappy hot dogs. But anyways, in baseball that would be about a 5.00 average, which would put you straight in the Hall of Fame. So, Knights of Labor and AFL, don't hang your heads, even though you overall had very little effect on the powerless workers. You put forward the effort. And here in America, where we're all rich and pampered, effort will get you a long way. And that's today's word. Nation. Captains of industry were rapidly emerging, not due to the growth of industry, no, but with their own hard work. As Thomas Edison said, genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. Well, ladies and gentlemen, these million-dollar businesses were literally drowning in sweat. But now, this is tip of the hat, wag of the finger. Andrew Carnegie, who, after retiring, spent the remainder of his life giving money away for public libraries, pensions, for professors, and other such philanthropist purposes. Apparently, the money totaled to $350 million. As Rev. Russell Cornwell said, there's not a poor person in the United States who was not made poor by their own shortcomings. If they need your donations, they deserve being poor. And if they are poor, it means they are, obviously, lazy and useless. So wag my finger to Carnegie, the poor lover. Now, President William McKinley allowed trusts in the United States instead of preventing them. Now, giant corporations can become even bigger without having competition, even though the labor gets short end of the stick. Which is more important, the laborer or the business? So tip of my hat to President McKinley, because we all know it's the business. Rockefeller was a rocket fellow. He organized the Standard Oil Company of Ohio. He was really an athlete, because he believed that the kind of primitive savagery prevailed in the jungle world of big business, where only the fittest survived. And according to him, the good Lord helped him and gave him his money. And of course, that makes sense. The rich are God's children. He favors us overall. Folks, during the late 19th century, industry was booming in America. While the nation was physically held together by the railroads, Commodore Cornelius Vanderbilt made millions on his superior railway services. Even though kerosene fire accidents were commonly occurring in his wooden rail cars. But why worry about something as trivial as safety?
Oh God, the fire! I'm on fire!
In the words of his son, William H. Vanderbilt, the public be damned. And Andrew Carnegie, the Steel King, John D. Rockefeller, the Oil Baron, and J. Pierpont Morgan, the Baker's Baker, all contributed to the industrial boom. And boom went the world. Welcome back. My guest here tonight is the great-great-great-grandson of the world's most successful entrepreneur. I'll ask him how hard it was to find a job. John D. Rockefeller, the fifth. So, Mr. Rockefeller, welcome to the show.
I'm glad to be here.
All right, let's get down to business. Your granddaddy, is my hero.
Well, I guess he's mine too.
And it seems you have a new book about him. Let's talk about the book. How the Rockefellers Fueled the World.
Yep. Yeah, that's it.
So, the world is a pretty big place, but isn't it, like, filled to the brim with oil? Why can't it just run itself?
Well, good point, Zayd. But ironically, that's one of the reasons my ancestor was so successful. I mean, there was always lots of oil and coal to be found to use as fuel, but the majority of it couldn't be harvested efficiently, and even if it could have been, nobody would have bought it because, well, no one needed it at the time.
But then that other fella, that Vanderbilt guy, he made the railroads thingy, and now Johnny Boy had something to sell to, right?
Exactly, but it didn't stop there, you see, because when everyone found out that fuel was being sold in such great amounts, they found ways to use that oil from everything from kerosene lamps to the automobile when it was first invented.
And thus, America discovered its love for black gold.
Yeah, I guess you could say that.
So, this book is a biography, yes?
Yes, I've always looked up to my namesake, and like a lot of my family, I've based a great deal of time striving in small ways to be as great as he was. At some point, it occurred to me that I should write about this man, who had so much power and so much wealth. It lasts even now, I mean, even though he come from such a different kind of background.
Yes, that's right. In this book, it describes him having to help out basically single mother run their household while his dad was constantly leaving. You know, his struggle reminded me of the harsh working conditions of the Gilded Age.
Well, it's true. People have this misconception that he just stumbled upon his fortune and didn't work for it.
Well, of course they would think that it's called the Gilded Age. Gilded is practically gold. Let's move on. Now, your grandpa was considered one of the captains of industry, correct?
Indeed he was.
How do you get the title of captain of something? I really like that. Captain Zayd has a ring to it.
Well, that was a noble title given mainly by the media at the time to those who led their industry. But later it came to mean a cutthroat businessman who would backstab and manipulate their ways towards fortune. Unfortunately, my great-great-great-grandfather was both.
You just made me want it so much more.
Well, if you really like making money that much, I mean...
I do. I really do.
Well, half his success came from the use of his greatest trust ever, right? His manipulation of the trusts, which he thoroughly abused. He was able to make deals with almost every other single major businessman. He fed prices to Vanderbilt, and he gave himself tax exemptions through J.P. Morgan's banks, all of which were considered these captains that you want to be. And he bought out almost every other single supplier of oil in the country and invested overseas. He even bought steel and iron for his container yards from Carnegie.
Man, you're making my mouth water.
Okay.
Anyways, that's all the time we have tonight. The book is How the Rockefellers Fueled the World. John D. Rockefeller V, everybody.